to look like a snack, you can't have a snack. And hyperfixating on anything in your life is leading your life with masculine energy. So it was a lifestyle change from a feminine perspective. Good morning, lovely feminine friends. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about skinny talk, or skinny influencers, skinny reels, skinny content that has blown up over the internet over the past several months. And if you, as a feminine woman, should follow these skinny influencers, if you should take their advice, if it is positive, it's going to help your femininity, and of course help you feel better about yourself, etc., all that stuff. Should you follow these skinny influencers and their advice? The short answer is no, but the long answer is yes. So let's get into it. Of course, I have to say the same thing before I start every video, which is thank you to my members, thank you to my subscribers, thank you to everybody who likes the videos that, they like, and for all those of you who leave comments and feedback and help the conversation keep going down in the comments. I appreciate you all so much. So skinny influencers, what are these? Well, this is a resurgence in skinny type content, or content that inspires people to lose weight, and we often refer to them as skinny influencers, formerly also originally known as skinny talk, which is basically a group of influencers that engages in more tough love principles to encourage you to get lean and to live a skinny lifestyle. The first thing that I want to say is that I believe that a lot of times when movements are pushed too far in one direction, there is like the opposite direction that is pushed a little bit too far in itself. Kind of like what we saw in terms of like trad wife rage bait content that exploded on the internet for a little bit of time. And now it's settled, and we have basically the people like myself who talk more about traditional feminine values that are still around after the dust has settled, talking about these things from a more balanced and authentic perspective. But we have seen like the extreme healthy at every size, even though that's not necessarily true for many people. We have seen like extreme body positivity in a way where people have actually lost their lives to it. And as a response to that, I feel as though we see these skinny influencers. So in a way, I think this is good because the tides are turning. But my short answer is that no, you should not follow these skinny influencers, because as a feminine woman, somebody who is looking to live their life authentically in femininity and who they truly are, I want you to approach things from less of a radical perspective and more of a balanced one. If you are familiar with my trad wife type content on this channel, you also know that I take this approach, a balanced approach. Things are not black and white. Things are not extreme, despite that little resurgence of rage bait content. Actual, authentic, traditional feminine values are balanced, holistic, and fair. So at its core, these skinny influencers and this skinny content does come from a masculine perspective. It is just like that leadership, or like that tough love, pick yourselves up by your bootstrap type of content when it comes to laziness or like making money. These are all from a masculine perspective, and they come from a top-down approach. The masculine model is a top-down approach, which basically means you are focused solely on the results. For example, the number on the scale. And then from that, you derive your strategies. But a feminine approach is a bottom-up approach. This doesn't mean that you can't get lean. This doesn't mean that you can't have an amazing body, but it's a different approach. And the skinny influencers, I think, take, again, a top-down approach, very focused on a certain number on the scale, hardcore principles, adherence to like that very big element of struggle, of pushing through, the use of many different slogans, such as like, in order to look like a snack, you can't have a snack, that kind of thing. And so that's why in the short form, I say that you as a feminine woman shouldn't listen to these skinny influencers. But now I'm going to elaborate a little bit more from a more holistic perspective and say, yes, you can listen to these skinny influencers, with the caveat of what I'm about to elaborate on. Once you have developed your femininity and your confidence, and you know how to live as an authentic feminine woman, you can basically look at any type of content, even if it is the type of content that I just mentioned, of that like leadership, that masculine model of top down, and take what works for you, adapt it to your life, and tune out the rest of the noise, because you are happy and fulfilled in who you are as a feminine woman. So once you feel as though you are confident in who you are able to look at any piece of advice and tailor it to your life. My members know that sometimes I suggest content that is a little bit more masculine, because over on that side of the channel, I talk about like things that I am listening to, audiobooks, podcasts. But I've reached a point after a few years of working on my femininity that I don't feel as though that type of content is pulling me in all different types of directions. Take a snippet of what they are saying and adapt it to my life, and then tune out the rest of the noise. And going back to the concept of like the bottom up approach, it reminds me of a comment that I read in one of the looks maxing subreddit. A woman was just very perplexed as to how anybody else can find satisfaction in like maximizing their looks if they know they'll never be supermodel worthy. And so this is an example of somebody who's pursuing looks maxing, which is basically just like to summarize the process of like trying to get yourself to look as good as you possibly can from a masculine model of perfection and results, rather than the feminine woman will use groups such as these subreddits in order to derive inspiration, in order to like light that creative fire in her into like setting micro goals that help her achieve the bigger picture, into just finding joy in the process of doing so. And that's why she's not as focused on the results, but the fact that she's so immersed in the process oftentimes does deliver her the same results as somebody who is going from that top-down masculine approach, but those people might be more burnt out by the lack of perfection. So this commenter might find herself burning herself out because she doesn't have the results of looking supermodel perfect, but the person who is looking at the looks maxing subreddit for micro inspiration of like things and ways that she can tweak her life to express her creativity is going to have long-lasting feminine influence in her life and is overall going to look better in the long term. People who approach skinny influencers from that masculine top-down approach are also going to have burnout when they go through things such as pregnancy, aging, postpartum, like hormonal changes, because they are hyper fixating on the end result. And hyper fixating on anything in your life is leading your life with masculine energy, so to speak. I know that these are really broad concepts, but I want you to picture a feminine woman right now that you know or that you have seen in media, for example. And you notice how whatever she goes through in her life, she has childlike happiness. She is still vivacious. She, of course, has sad days and sad moments, but overall, no matter what comes her way, even if she faces tragedy, she is a happy and fulfilled woman. Why is that? Because she's approaching life from a bottom up perspective. All of her goals, she is enjoying the process, enjoying the day by day. And so she's not discouraged if the end result isn't exactly what she had anticipated, but more often, like I had just mentioned, she will still get success. Even if you incorporate the smallest things in terms of losing weight into your life, such as walking every day or like a slight calorie deficit, you are going to see results within 90 days. And that's why when I made my video on how I lost 40 pounds postpartum, I will link it down below as well as above. This is the type of immersive energy that I tried to bring into my life. And particularly talking about losing weight, I am here to tell you that I have done that masculine approach of skinny influencer type of losing when I had done pageants. Now, I don't show myself in a swimsuit anymore, but you can just Google me and you are going to find my old pageant pictures. It is a complete lifestyle of totally being obsessed with food and exercise. But when I had lost that weight postpartum, of course, there's like ways in which my body's forever going to be changed, like a C-section pouch. But I was still able to reach like a good level of looking good in a swimsuit, so to speak, to like a similar extent. But my process in there was a lifestyle change from a feminine perspective rather than when I was doing pageants. It is still more of a masculine perspective of like a top-down goal of winning, best swimsuit body, for example. So back to what I was saying about the long answer of like you being able to look at any type of content and derive what works for you. I'm going to give you some concrete examples of how I look at skinny influencers, where I'm able to look at 100% of their content, but perhaps derive only like 50 or 25% of the influence, because I wanted to fit into a feminine model of my life, a feminine model of my life of flowing with ease, of feeling filled through movement, of enjoying my food, of still enjoying seeing like the scale going down and looking better as we approach summer, building muscle, looking leaner. These are all things that I enjoy, but it's from more of a feminine perspective, of more of like a holistic lifestyle change that satisfies my creativity and my femininity in every aspect. So first up, fast food hacks. For example, going to McDonald's and just getting like a Big Mac without the bun and then substituting your fries for 4 chicken nuggets. What a great hack, and you still have the satisfaction of eating McDonald's. You're still able to take your kids out for a happy meal and like live your life to its fullest extent, and yourself eat some McDonald's without feeling as though you have to eat celery every single day. Baking a special treat every month. This is actually a comment that somebody left on my weight loss video of like the 40 pounds down. They talked about how every month they bake a special treat, and so I started doing that after I had read that comment because I thought it was such an amazing idea. This helps you look forward to, for example, now is like berry season. I'm going to make a berry cake in a couple weeks. Look forward to doing that. It's fun, it's creative, you get to make something that looks pretty, and again, you feel as though you're not missing out on life, but you are incorporating it into your life in a way that doesn't deprive you and is like that holistic bottom-up approach of femininity. Another tip that I really love, and I also mentioned it in my video that many skinny influencers talk about, is eating everything but eating better portions. You can of course use apps such as like Weight Watchers or MyFitnessPal, or just even on the back of like a box, for example, a box of cereal, like what is an actual portion, and just eating the portion of food that is on the back of the box. This will help you train yourself into like what is an actual portion, and even just by doing this simple small hack, you will lose weight. Trust me, because we are overeating, many of us in North America, and we don't even realize it. Of course, being creative with your food, just like little swaps such as turkey and tacos instead of ground beef, those kinds of things. I know many people find this very controversial, but Weight Watchers helped me at the beginning of my weight loss journey because they have so many simple hacks to this kind of thing, like what you can swap here and there if you're just looking to add more of a calorie deficit to your diet. Another thing is like volume eating. That's another group that I follow on Reddit. It has great ideas if you're somebody who likes to binge eat, of like eating a lot of food for a little bit of calories. There was this big trend of like the Tiffany plate, which essentially is just like a remake of the Weight Watchers plates that basically are like a lot of volume eating food that many people will eat for lunch. So you like trick your brain into actually thinking that you are eating a lot and like a heavy volume of food, but it's lower calorie. Then you have a variety of food. If you are somebody who likes to play with the different combinations, try new crackers, for example, this is a good idea for you. And finally, I really like that many of these skinny influencers talked about being honest with yourself about the type of exercise that you like to do. In millennial and old Gen Z culture, there's a lot of like 5 a.m. influencer, like heavy workout type of content, and that doesn't really work for everybody. Some people do find that it fits their feminine lifestyle, but not everybody can like commit to that or wants to commit to that. And something that I did admire and I did take from that was just to let yourself be honest with yourself about the type of exercise that you enjoy. And again, that's why you had like a resurgence in Pilates Princess, I think, which I mentioned in my previous video about feminine hobbies, because it was just this wave of women being honest with themselves about the type of exercise that they like. A lot of people are into like pickleball and tennis for that reason as well. It used to be seen as like an old person hobby, but not anymore. And I love that. I love the idea of just like looking at your own personality, where it's at, and tailoring your life to include exercise that actually makes you feel good. And that's a very feminine thing to do. Again, that bottom up approach. I'm going to end the video there because, as you can see, my kids are getting a little bit restless. Leave your comments again down below. I also appreciate when you like the video because it helps my small channel reach others. And of course, for my members, you all are like the backbone of what keeps the channel going. I appreciate you all so much. See you next time. Bye-bye.